All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
We've made it. We made it. What day is it? It's a Monday morning, and we are live talking college football. How do you start the week off any better than this? Welcome to the show, everybody. We're breaking down the national championship today. My name's Bill. Put $1 in front of it. You'll find me on Discord and Twitter. With me today, two of the very best in the college football streets from our Ship It Nation college football team, HamHawk41, and I am Robbins. How's it going today, guys?
Great. I'd finally kind of excited to see this game come to fruition. Definitely didn't think Miami was going to be here, but it's should be a blast nonetheless.
Yeah, super excited. It's been such a great college football season. Bittersweet when you see it come to the end, but should be a really good game, exciting game. Looking forward to seeing what happens on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to shout out Go Collect as always seems to be the first one in here, first one to comment. We got almost 20 people in here already. Michael Rice in the comments as well. Also making a point that Go Collect is always here. Glad you guys are with us. I know it's a weird time. Maybe the holiday will get a few more people in here. But, yeah, like you said, HamHawk, the Miami story in and of itself is a peculiar one. Just the fact that they didn't make the ACC championship game, didn't win their own conference, and then they almost lost to Texas A&M. Notre Dame could have easily been here. So maybe that adds a chip on the shoulder to this Miami side. And then Indiana, historically the worst college football program in history. So there's a bunch of different storylines to go with. Let's start off, though, breaking down the captain spot. Just looking at this ownership that we have, a lot of it's flowing to Mendoza, and that makes sense. I think pricing is such that you can get to Mendoza at captain and play it a bunch of different ways, but we're looking at volume plays here. Where are you guys going at captain? Kenny, we'll start with you. Just, there's one really obvious play here. It seems like, how are you getting a little bit different, or where are you going? Are you getting that much different at captain?
From an MME side, you probably don't want to overload on Mendoza, but I feel like that's the easiest way to build today is start with a Mendoza captain and, play some Indiana pass catchers. Like me personally, I think Indiana kind of rolls here. So I'm going to build that way a lot. I'm not going to have much Miami, maybe just a scatter of, some Miami captain here and there. But yeah, just kind of starting with the Indiana captain. It's, Mendoza or Surratt. It'll be kind of interesting to see how these shake out, and if there will be I guess starting Mendoza captain, it's kind of there's going to be kind of some obvious builds, but I don't think it's impossible to get different, playing a Nowakowski or EJ Williams with a Mendoza. So there is some ways there if you're going Indiana captain side. And really, I think if you're going with the Miami captain and building that way, I think you're going to just kind of automatically get different. If you play a Tony or a Fletcher, playing a Carson Beck captain seems pretty dang risky tonight. I don't think, he's kind of been running well, running the ball well in these playoffs. And I don't necessarily think that comes to fruition with Indiana's defense. They do I guess not to pretend like I'm some big analysis here, but I keep hearing on podcasts and places talking about how much post-snap movement Indiana does. And that could definitely confuse the crap out of Carson Beck. And we've seen him have some massive interception games, and I don't think that's out of the question here at all. But yeah, I guess, I prefer an Indiana captain, kind of fine with all of them, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's kind of how I'm approaching captain for this slate. I don't know if you got anything much different, Ian, or.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit from single entry cash perspective. I do think that Miami has a chance in this game. I don't quite see a blowout. I do have one of those big future tickets on Miami that, right before I did jump on that one. I'm more of a blue blood kind of person too, being just SEC Florida background. But I think Miami has the chops to stay in this game, breakdown perspective. But if I'm looking from a DFS perspective, just from a cash single entry point of view, I'm looking at people that are going to be on the field. So if you're throwing Mendoza as captain, which is the most expensive guy on the plate, it's how do you fill out the other five? And we always talk about volume. That's been our preaching point for years. Is how do you find volume, not just the upside, but necessarily the volume of guys who can be on the field. And there's just a lot more value on the Miami side for guys who are going to be on the field as pass catchers and as runners. So if you throw in Fletcher as the actual back, and then you throw in guys like Marion Daniels, even Alex Bauman, I think is a key piece with Lofton being hurt. Those guys would be on the field. They're going to be guys who can catch balls underneath, create some volume, and allow you to build out a lineup with some volume with Surratt, with Mendoza, with guys in Indiana that you want to play as well.
Yeah, and a couple things you guys touched on that is going to be key in this one. Hamhock, you mentioned the movement on Indiana's defense. The two games that Miami lost during the season were his interception games. And so that's something to keep an eye on. Or maybe since he hasn't been in class for 2 years and he's coming up on 30 years old, he's old enough to be able to work with those movements a little bit better and catch some of the disguises. But yeah, it comes down to volume. And just looking at the volume on the Miami side, you get the value at wide receivers. After Lofton went down, Alex Bowman played 82 offensive snaps. Keelan Marion only played 59 offensive snaps, which is weird because he had, he's still getting a ton of the target share when he's on the field. But that's another thing that I'm kind of considering too, is how many more plays. Miami ran 88 plays on offense against Ole Miss, and Indiana scored so quickly. I think they ran 60. So
plus there's turnovers, short fields for Indiana. It was kind of a wonky game offensively. Mm-hmm. But we kind of know who they are. They got a split backfield with 3 pass catchers.
Yeah. And we just know where the volume is going to go regardless of how many plays they run. So let's kind of break down the quarterback position a little bit. With Beck and Mendoza, we know where ownership's going to go. We know what name people are going to click. Yet Carson Beck is scary, but if this offensive line can protect some of that interior pressure a little bit better, I think, Carson Beck has one of the fastest release times in all of college football, and for the most part has taken care of the ball this year. So I do think there's opportunity there where people just aren't going to be playing him. And then Mendoza, I don't know how much we need to talk about Mendoza. Like, what's the route to fading him? Like, just that Miami's edge rushers get to him constantly the entire game. I know they're banged up in the secondary, so you look at the first half, especially with Lucas out on the Miami side, and you think, oh, Indiana should feast. So how are you guys approaching the quarterbacks, and are you fading Mendoza?
So I think, the easiest path for Mendoza to fail, I think, is just I don't think it's gonna be that Miami stops him. I just think it's gonna be poor touchdown variance. Like if Hemby gets 2 and Black gets 1 and Indiana's rolling, then all of a sudden, let's say it's Indiana puts 42 points up. There's 3 touchdowns for the running backs, 3 for Mendoza. That probably doesn't get you there in a captain scenario. A flex, that's probably fine. But that's Mendoza's path to failure if he doesn't get the touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns last week to 4 different guys. That's kind of what I'm after. I could see something like that happening again. I'm probably not going to lock Mendoza across 150 lineups. Like, that's just too risky. But he's going to be in about all of them. And Carson Beck, I'll play some. I don't want to play a 5-1 Indiana with just Carson Beck. Like, I don't see that. I don't see that succeeding. So I'm going to want to pair him with a pass catcher. So let's say, I almost don't even want to play Beck unless I have a Miami captive pass catcher, because I don't really see him succeeding in the flex with the wide receiver that's a flex as well. Pairing him, it's just, it's tough today, like with that. And as chalky as Mendoza is going to be, there's definitely paths to getting different. Like, let's say you're building a 5-1 Indiana. You go Mendoza captain, you take his 2 best receivers, you throw a running back in there. Well, then you need some 2 cheap pieces instead of going Marion and Daniels, which are going to probably garner the most ownership. You could go like a Nowakowski and Luka Gilbert, the number 2 tight end for Miami. I like the tight ends for Miami tonight, but those are just some ways to get different with, in a Mendoza captain lineup. But yeah, definitely hard to fade Mendoza in any format today. I'll be kind of curious to see if he runs a little more, if Miami doesn't blitz. If they're rushing forward, there might be some lanes there that he can take off. He's definitely not afraid to take off after that run he had against Oregon where he was trying to spin and do some Michael Vick stuff and ended up fumbling the ball. And luckily the center was jogging right behind him to jump on it. But yeah, that's kind of how I'm kind of viewing today as far as like the quarterbacks go.
Yeah, there's a couple paths. I mean, Miami completely shut down Julian Sand a couple rounds ago against Ohio State. And there's just different paths. With Marcel Reed, they really took advantage of as well in the first round. It's just a matter of, can Mendoza fail? If Miami gets there with their front four and they have a spy as a linebacker, which I would anticipate. I mean, they have a really good defensive coordinator that he's not bolting anywhere for another job. That's another thing is these two teams for the first time have stability in their coaching staff where guys are there. So if they have that game plan stout and they can get there with their front four, which is what they've been able to do, which has allowed them to win these games, then yeah, it's not like Chambliss started running until the fourth quarter last week and he's a much better runner than Mendoza is. So Mendoza's could end up with some sack yardages that kind of take him back. If we see a game like the Big Ten championship game where it was a 13-10 game, the Iowa game, they scored 20 points. The Oregon game, the regular season Oregon game didn't put up points. Last week was kind of weird with a lot of the short fields with pick six with just kind of looked like Oregon kind of unraveled there. So it's hard to see what the game state is because this might be the first time that Indiana gets overpowered on the line of scrimmage man to man, which hasn't really been the case before because Miami is built from the inside out. They're built from the offensive line, the defensive line. They spent money at coordinators just like they spent money on their players. And that's the path that Mendoza can have to fail. Now, do I think it's going to happen? Not necessarily. He's been so quick with his decision-making. He seems to get better. He seems to understand what's going on. Indiana has this ability in the coordinators as well. I'm sure their game plan will be to try to get the ball out quickly. The chemistry he has with Surratt and Cooper and Becker has been tremendous. He's just made every play. So how can you fade someone who's made every play? But that would be the path that I say to take you at least maybe off captain line if you think this game is going to slog. I think that Miami has the horses, especially in the defensive line, to get after Mendoza, to get there with four, to have the ability to spy him on the middle of the field and prevent those big plays in a similar way that they did against Marcel Reed, in a similar way that they did against Julian Sane, and really force that game out of their comfort zone. On the Beck side, you guys made it. You guys mentioned it. Yeah, Miami can definitely hang with no turnovers. It's a mistake. If they don't make mistakes, this is going to be a game. If they're going to make the mistakes of the U and the crystal ball mistakes, then Indiana's going to win by double digits. Beck's been there. He's been in college for 24 years. He makes more money than half the coaches in the country. You pay him for a reason. He's got big game upside. I don't think the stage is too bright for him. We've seen him here before. A little bit of revenge tour for him after getting hurt last year in the semifinals. So, if he plays within himself, he could definitely go win this game. Like Bill mentioned, he's been running, so he's got a little bit of upside there. He can push the ball downfield, but that's where you start seeing Keelan Murray and CJ Daniels kind of pop up a little bit because the attention will be on Tony. So I definitely think there's a path that Beck, you play a little Beck stack in there with some of the cheaper receivers. Maybe that's how you approach it. And I think Marion showed last week that he can go off. CJ Daniels has been a little banged up, but he's had great games as well, especially if they're Indiana's going to put a lot of attention on Malachi Tony, which why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and just looking at the usage throughout the playoffs, it's kind of been Keelan Marion as the number 2. The one thing that skews it last week, though, you're looking at Tony had 10 targets, Marion had 10 targets, Daniels had 7 targets, but Miami also ran a ton of plays, which I just don't think is going to happen in this game.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily looking at, those ceiling scores, like with the opportunity they're getting. But in showdown, it doesn't matter if you score 65 points or 110 points, as long as you score more than everybody else. So, it like the way the variance in how this game could go, having a captain that only scores 25 points might be enough tonight. So that's something to consider as you're going in. And, turnovers got brought up too, Hamhock. We were talking a little bit about turnovers before we jumped on. Just that the turnover variance has been insane throughout the college football playoffs. Obviously, we had Pons with a pick six to start the game last week. And then you mentioned the Mendoza fumble that his center just happened to be right there. And then on the Miami side, how many interceptions should they have had against Ole Miss? Like we talk about how there's a chance they're not even like they're so close to not even being here, but against Ole Miss, they could have beat them by 2 touchdowns. It seems like
They probably should have, based on the box score and the chances and opportunities that they had.
All right, so quarterbacks.
Has Indiana lost a fumble this year? Was that still a thing?
I don't know.
They lost one to Old Dominion in week 1, and they haven't lost one since.
Holton Joseph, 75-yard touchdown run.
Yeah,
first play of the season.
That's how they started the year. That's crazy to think, huh?
That's actually looking at the box scores. That's one funny thing. I've seen Old Dominion tweeting about how close they were to being national champions, just based on how they played Indiana.
So that fumble and last week it seemed like every break just went Indiana's way as far as fumble recoveries. Anytime that there was something on the ground, it just kind of went that way. And we saw how much kind of that skews. I mean, that can massively be a football game. Miami, that's just kind of that's the word of the game, turnovers, and we just don't know how that's going to be. I think Indiana got a little break. There's a little cold front in Florida. If it was one of those kind of hot, humid nights where it was in the 70s and the humidity is still there, that's where Miami could have had a home field advantage. The crowd's going to be more Indiana fans. I've been to that stadium. That was the stadium I grew up going to. I'll tell you that much for a fact. Indiana will have more fans in the stands. That won't be a factor. I think the home field factor in that stadium itself is the heat, the humidity, especially with teams from the Midwest, Northeast coming down. That you can't prep for that. But I think it's a little cooler in Florida than it typically is. So you get a little bit of a break there.
What is it? What is it?
Adjustment.
55 degrees in Florida. 60.
My mom's complaining how cold it is when she's golfing. It's negative 10 degrees out here where we are.
I was gonna say we haven't gotten to 0 yet today.
So 0 with snow on the ground. Everyone saw the Chicago game last night. That's where I live. So,
just looking. So moving on to running back now. The volume is there. We know where the volume is going to go. Like Indiana's going to run the ball as much as they can, and if they get ahead, they could split the Hemby and Black so many different ways. On the Miami side is interesting because Marty Brown had a little bit more run against Ole Miss. Now, is that a product of the opponent and how many plays Miami ran and the fact that they could run as much as they wanted to? Like he was pretty effective too. Fletcher still had 23 carries, but Brown had 14.
You mentioned Marty Brown. It seems like, and this happened in the Ohio State game too, he's kind of been the closer. Right, they wear him down with Fletcher, and sometimes you get to the end of the games like, why Fletcher not in there, especially in the goal line? And it's because they got the fresh Marty Brown coming in. Fletcher pounds him. And if Marty Brown seems like he's the kind of closer guy right there. So I think it's more of a trend than an anomaly based on the plays because he was doing that in the Ohio State game as well to close the game. I think he had the last touchdown in the Ohio State game.
Yep. Yeah, he's got a touchdown in the last 2 games, and last week he had 14 carries. So the increased usage is interesting. Like I said, I don't know if they'll run enough plays for him to get 14 carries again this week, but
14,
is that a spot we can get a guy who's going to get double-digit touches at low single-digit ownership?
Yeah, like for me, I mean, I will say the Miami side's like way more intriguing at running back. Like Indiana's pretty cut and dry. I would say like maybe Miami, like they probably have a stouter run defense than pass defense. Like at this point in the season, like Lacey had that huge run, but other than that, he really didn't do a ton. But like the Miami side, like Miami or Indiana's good against the run, but they have been beaten by some running backs. I kind of wish Miami had, I mean, that's kind of like Malachi Tony's role, but if they had like a scat back, like I would really, really be interested, like more interested than these two guys. I think they're more like in the tackles. You know, as far as like what Tamar Brown, like against Ohio State, he finished that game, but last week he played a lot in the first half too. Like he might have had, like they kind of almost reversed it to where they mixed Marty Brown in more in the first half and had Fletcher close it. One thing that was super impressive for Miami against Ole Miss is how many times did they like get in a pile and that pile just kept moving down the field. Yes. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Miami's going to out physical Indiana like that in the run game. Like that's totally possible. I don't know. I don't know if that's how it's going to shake out. I could definitely see it, but I do like, you know, Marty Brown's not getting near the ownership Fletcher is. And like even Deer like last week, that huge run he had was like a sweep out of a shotgun around the outside. I think if they can get these running backs maybe on the perimeter in the passing game, and I mean that kind of helps Tony as well. That's a spot that they could beat Indiana. You know, as far as like the trenches go, like I mean, I don't know like weight wise where Miami shakes out as far as nationally with their offensive line, but they might have the tallest offensive line. And I mean that Markel Bell guy is like just. Like he just stands out. He's 6'9". He's a monster at left tackle. You know, and then like Indiana, they had Stephen Daly was one of their key pieces they lost, you know, down the stretch. But the replacement, Naduke, or don't know for sure how to pronounce that, but he had 2 sacks and a blocked punt against Oregon. So I don't think they've taken as much of a step back as like people felt with their defensive line when they started dealing with the injuries, and they've kind of been banged up along the defensive front this year, anyways. But I think that's kind of an interesting spot that I'm going to take, like with Miami. So Miami shares definitely getting some like Marty Brown being overweight there. Yeah, and then I mean, I guess you know the other side, like you know Indiana, and it's so weird. Like still talk like even if Indiana wins the national championship, I still don't know if I'm going to be able to like picture Indiana as like that Ohio State or that you know that blue blood. But I mean, they have an All-American left tackle, first team All Big Ten center. Like they're just as well equipped, you know, to go against this Miami defensive line as anybody. It'll just be really interesting to see how the battle in the trenches works out, you know, for these like running game. Like just, I think that's going to be a huge key piece to this game. So, but yeah, I guess that's kind of all I have on the running backs. I mean, Indiana's just kind of cut and dry. You're kind of hoping for the touchdown variance. You know, last week it was Black. You know, they got the tutties. And I mean, to be fair, Black looked way better than Himby last week. I made a comment that Himby has a vision of Trent Richardson last week. He just kept running right into his lineman's ass like over and over and over last week. It felt like, but yeah, it's kind of where I'm going to go with the RBs.
Yeah. Briefly, just about the O-line, D-line matchup. It's kind of crazy when you think about this matchup in the NFL picks and future NFL players. Miami's got 2 top 10 picks in the O-line, D-line. I don't, you know, Indiana will obviously get guys that are drafted and played in the NFL. Obviously, Mendoza is going to go number 1 overall. But beyond that, I think Miami is stacked with a lot more like top end NFL talent, especially in the line, which is just kind of interesting considering they're such massive underdogs. Deservedly show they should be underdogs, but just like on paper matchup, it's just crazy to think about that way, about who's going to bully who and how we would look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a discussion is how it's going to go in the trenches. Both teams have been pretty stellar, and one of the reasons Miami's had some success is, you know, they run pretty tight splits, and they just don't allow you to penetrate up the middle. On the Indiana side, though, you said it, Kenny. Just looking at the numbers, Hemby's been getting more snaps in the playoffs. He's been getting more carries for the most part, but Black is just running the ball so much more effectively. Like he's been the better running back. You know, Hemby seems like he has a little bit more pass catching upside, but I don't know if it's enough to sway me. But it seems like a situation where maybe you can play both. I don't think you're going to get a ton of leverage playing one over the other. I think their ownership's going to probably be pretty close because they're projecting similarly. They're around the same price. And yeah, maybe a situation where you can play both. And
One
just
quick
hope for
thing.
that.
I want to just touch on the running backs real quick. So Pringle didn't play at all last week. I kind of feel like he's phased out. I almost wonder if Marty Brown was a little dinged up to end the year because Pringle just kind of came out of nowhere and now he's completely phased out. And then the RB3 on the Indiana side, Kobe Martin. If you think Indiana absolutely obliterates Miami, I don't mind running Kobe Martin with 4 other Indiana guys. Like I wouldn't play Kobe Martin unless there's 4 other Indiana guys, but that's definitely a way to get unique where if Martin gets like the last drive and has 40 yards and a touchdown, like that could be enough to really separate you. But those just quick couple things I forgot to add.
Yeah, the build part of that is important. Not kind of on the island, right? You're talking about on a complete Indiana onslaught, right?
Oh yeah. The only way I'm playing Martin is with 4 other Indiana guys.
Yeah, and at 3,200, you just look at the likelihood if it is an Indiana onslaught. What other 3,200 guy is going to get you more than 8 to 10 points? So Kobe Martin could be that little difference maker. I mean, he's going to come in at what 2 to 4% owned. So there's just nobody's going to have him. And then the wide receiver position might be the most interesting on the slate. Just looking, we know where the ball's going to go for the most part between Tony, Marion, Daniels, Surratt, Cooper, Becker. But the tight ends are interesting now. Like we already mentioned that Lofton's out. Alex Bowman should get a ton more run. Are we taking dart throws like Joshua Moore and JoJo Trader? Are we going to, like you already mentioned, EJ Williams too, Nowakowski's there. Like the ownership, I would say as a whole is going to funnel to the top 3 guys for each team. But no, I don't think there's really any ownership that's going to get too insane. I think it's pretty flat between all 6 of these guys. So what are your thoughts on the wide receiver position here? And I mean, do you just play full on stacks and run back with wide receivers? Like I want to play all 6 of these guys is kind of what it's coming down to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously Marion and Daniels really, really stand out from a value perspective. Gosh, the sun is really shifting throughout the day and the reflections are getting bad. Anyways, but I mean, they're really obvious from a value perspective. The Moore and Trader and like Gilbert. So let's see, they're from $1,000 to $2,000. Like, I don't think like you'll kind of want to watch in your build. Like if you're building and you have $3,000 left off the table and you're playing like Luka Gilbert over Marion, that's like pretty tough, but that is something that would separate you. Like if Gilbert catches a 10-yard touchdown, that's 8 points, and Marion just kind of has like an average game. Like, I mean, he had the best game of the season last week and a better matchup for him. Like in MME, I mean, well, like Alex Bauman is probably honestly the best, like as far as matchups go, like playing a tight end against Indiana is probably like the best matchup. Maybe I don't know. None of these guys like feel too wonderful, but that's kind of how I do it. Like if I'm going to pay a cheap wide receiver for Miami, I don't want to have a ton of salary left off the board because you're already getting different enough. Like I don't want to like cripple my lineup and give up that much projection, playing one of those guys. If that makes any sense. But yeah, definitely. I mean, in MME settings, it's not bad to include these guys for sure. I guess, yeah. And then like Indiana, I mean, I love Riley Nowakowski tonight. I think that I think like ownership, he's on the field more than any other skill position player for Indiana. I mean, I feel pretty confident in saying he's going to get like a catch. If he does turn maybe like 3 catches and then also gets a touchdown, like that's a pretty competitive score to compete against Daniels and Marion. So that's kind of where I like going for value, is the Indiana value. But yeah, and then I guess, Cooper, Surratt for Indiana, they've kind of been the guys all year. Cooper very, very specifically plays the slot, so he's not out there as much. That being said, he's had like 14 or 15 touchdowns this year. So, they get inside the 10. I'm not going to pretend that I've watched every snap of Indiana, but just looking at those numbers, it feels like they maybe scheme him touchdowns in the end zone, like from the slot position. But yeah, it's just kind of, the one-offs in your build are going to get you a a little different here, playing the Nowakowski over the Marions and stuff like that. But yeah, and I guess one other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is like the injuries in the Miami secondary. So Xavier Lucas is out for the first half because of a targeting penalty against Mississippi. And Damari Brown hasn't played at all in the playoffs. He's expected to play, but game time decision. Don't know how effective, that's going to be. So the corner that did get snaps because of Lucas getting that targeting call, I think Antone is maybe his last name. He has a really, really poor PFF grade. I mean, that could be a chance for Indiana in the first half to take some shots with like Becker and Surratt and play on the outside that would be facing that guy. Just little edges like that are things I kind of try to look for in a showdown slate, but just kind of something to think about where, Miami is a little bit decimated in the secondary. So, but that's kind of the thoughts I have for now in my head here. So,
Yeah, I mean, from that like cash perspective, getting off of Tony seems kind of, I don't know how you do that in that situation. Obviously, if you're playing Indiana onslaught, you're probably not going back with Tony. I very much favor Surratt as the cash receiver for Indiana. I just think he's possession guy, pass catcher. I think he's the best receiver. I know Cooper has had the touchdown variance. He's had some bigger games. Surratt's been a little bit banged up middle of the year, but to me, Surratt's the number one guy. The target share, targets per game seem to back that up a little bit volume wise. The tight ends are key. Whether it's Nowakowski or Bauman, they're going to be involved. They'll be in the field. Can they score a touchdown? Will they score a touchdown? I think one of those two guys we're going to see with a score. And then he gets, I'm not going to beat the drum that much more with the talk about Marion Daniels. I do think that Daniels has a chance to show up. He came into the year as the presumed number one receiver. He had that crazy catch in the first game of the year. He has been a little hurt. He's not, he's been getting targets. Marion obviously had the good game last week, but I think Bill mentioned that he had 7 targets last week. He's running routes. He's out there. If there's a lot of attention given to Tony and the secondary piece is Daniels, that could just be volume that adds up at a much cheaper price than anybody else on the board. When it comes down to Daniels versus Marion, are you chasing last week's game? Or are you trying to go for some upside? I'm not saying that Daniels will outscore Marion. I'm not saying that that's one to play. I just lean that way. Just kind of following where the targets has been all year.
Yeah, and the point too is how much are they on the field? You brought it up early in the show. You want guys who are going to be out there. Obviously, Malachi Toney was on the play for 84 snaps against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
CJ Daniels played 75, and then Marion played 59. So you get guys that are on the field to get your opportunity. And then on the Indiana side too, Surratt played 57 snaps against Oregon, and the next closest wide receiver was Charlie Becker with 40. So Indiana will run some rotations, and they'll run some 2 tight end scheme, and that just takes away one wide receiver. And like we've talked about the entire show and basically the entire season, if they can get up and run the ball, they will. And just a note, Elijah Surratt has 2 more touchdowns than Omar Cooper in 2 fewer games. So I think he still holds he has 15 and Cooper has 13, but Cooper did have that one huge game against the Sycamores early in the season. That helped him out quite a bit. One thing I want to note though is that Miami does play a little bit more man defense than other teams that we've seen throughout the year. And when Indiana faces man, Elijah Surratt has such a significantly higher target share than when they face zone defense. It kind of flattens out a little bit, and that's where we see more Cooper. Now, I don't know that we're going to we can't sit here and predict how Miami's going to scheme their defense, especially with the injuries and the guys out on the defensive side of the ball. But if we do see them play a little bit more man, I mean, Surratt to me, if you want to play him and get different, play him double the field, like in the captain spot, even triple the field in the captain spot. And then, stack him differently with, throw in a Nowakowski with him, or when you do your run backs, take a chance on a Bowman in a few lineups, just get a ton of exposure. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. It's not necessarily finding those dart throws that's going to catch it, like Luka Gilbert catching a touchdown. It's more so I want to take those guys that I know are going to be on the field and get volume. And if I see their ownerships at, like Surratt is at 40% in the flex, I'll play him 80%. And now, the
I was just
position that we all
thinking
love.
Might need a kicker. That's
might
right.
need a kicker. So I think the most important part of college football DFS showdown is just knowing who the kickers are, because they don't get talked about. We know a little bit more because of the playoff. There's a lot more exposure, but Nico Radicic is the kicker for Indiana. Carter Davis is the kicker for Miami. However, Indiana, if he's healthy, Brennan Frankie will come out and kick the 50-plus yard field goals for Indiana. So he's probable. So it sounds like he's going to go, so that if Indiana does get to on the other side of the 50-yard line, they might take more chances, like take fewer chances on fourth down and kick more field goals. But whether Frankie's been in or out, Radicic has 7 DK points or more in every single game. And he's kicking field goals at a 94% clip, but that's probably partially because he doesn't kick the long ones. And then Carter Davis is fine. I mean, he's got some upside. He's had a couple of mid-teens games on DK. And if you think Miami is not going to be able to move the ball all the way down the field and have to settle for more field goals, they're just guys in the $4,000 range, 4,800 and 4,400. I hate playing kickers. I've played them before. Like, there's some games I'll play a kicker, but I just despise it. And it just, like, in this game where it feels like we know where the volume and where the usage is going to go on the offensive side of the ball, it just makes it a little bit more difficult for me to play kickers. But like, how do you guys approach kickers in general on Showdown, and how do you look tonight?
So for me, I think like the kickers tonight, like the way I'm going to use them, it's going to be like a very specific build, as like it's going to be a low scoring game. Just a rule generally I use for kickers, which is less true in college, is I don't play like the quarterback and the kicker together from the same team. I don't mind that with Indiana tonight, but I don't think I'd play Carson Beck with Carter Davis, just because like Beck's going to be pretty dependent on touchdowns. And if they're not, if they're kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns, that definitely, boy, this sun is getting ridiculous. I can't imagine how annoying it is watching me. But yeah, that's kind of how I'm going to attack the kickers. I'm definitely going to have some, but it's going to be like, I'm really going to watch my construction with them. Like just looking at projections, like they have a very, very comparable projection to like even Marion and Daniels. Granted, the ceiling's never going to be as high for a kicker as it is for a wide receiver, but just like from a, projection standpoint, like the kickers aren't that bad of plays at all. But I think I'd be very careful how I construct them. So that's my thoughts on kickers. Definitely viable, but just be careful.
Yeah, I also can say the same thing. I think the most important thing to take away is think about, if you're playing a kicker, who else are you playing with it? Kickers would probably mean no quarterbacks.
Like if you think this,
yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was
if you think this game
that
is,
point.
If you think this game is like both teams score less than 20 points, I think I want a kicker in my lineup. Like that's kind of how another way I'd approach it. If it's going to be a 28-24 game, I don't think I want a kicker. If it's going to be 17-14, I think you want a kicker. So
yeah,
that's kind of just
Yeah, kickers seem like with Surratt, Tony, and some running backs.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most said phrases here at Ship It Nation. It's not about who you play, it's how you play them. And I think that's a really great point that, if you think Miami's kicker is going to do a lot, that probably means their offense isn't doing quite as much, specifically the quarterback. So that's a great point. So yeah, that kind of that covers every position. In terms of, I guess we can, if you guys have any questions in the chat before we get out of here, throw them in now. But otherwise, are there any like extreme stands that either of you guys are taking? Not necessarily a one guy I'm playing, but because you're playing almost everybody, it seems like, on a showdown slate. But what are some of the stronger stands you're taking tonight?
I'll just say, I think you guys, I kind of like the Miami side. I'm going to play Daniels. I do like him as the second receiver there. So you're going to see him, probably more captain side for me than otherwise.
Yeah, I like that. I kind of thought you might be saying something along those lines from what you've
Yeah.
been, talking. It's probably hard to have it like when you've got a sick future like that. It's probably kind of hard to not like pull for Miami as well,
Well,
too.
yeah, there's that. We've been talking through these things for years now, so we probably know what
Right.
each other's thinking anyway.
Yeah. I guess for me, not anything like super hot takes, but like just running like optimal builds from like using different sets of projections. I'm kind of guessing like the Indiana 5-1s are going to be like the 10 to 15% range owned. It might even be lower than that. Like I want probably at least 25% of my portfolio tonight to have 5-1 Indiana, if not more than that. Like that's just kind of like my stand that I'm taking. I don't know. I kind of want to, do some more analysis today and see how popular that will get. But as of right now, I think that's a kind of a hot take. Just, a massive, Indiana portfolio. But yeah, I don't know. This game's going to be, I went to the Fantasy College Football World Championship last week, and I was very glad that we got to go to the Miami Ole Miss game rather than the Indiana Oregon game, because that was way more entertaining, for being there. So, but yeah, this should be an awesome game. My biggest, I guess, betting stand, I got Indiana minus 13.5. That's my pick today. So I guess me and Ian are going to be rooting against each other, but that's all right.
I like that you did the alt line though. I like you went up to 13
Yeah,
and a half,
yeah.
because if you're going to go away,
Like, what's the difference between 8.5 and 13.5? And
right.
so.
Yeah, and this one, the one thing I keep going back to is the Michigan Washington national championship from a couple of years ago. Leading up to the game, I felt like we were trying to find every different way we could that Washington could win the football game, knowing that Michigan was the better team and knowing that, Michigan was a favorite for a reason. Like today, Indiana's an 8.5-point favorite. That's pretty heavy for a national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
But I went back and I was like, yeah, if they can get the ball to Odunze this way, or if Penix can actually run the ball a little bit, this like coming up with all these different scenarios, I'm like, yeah, if they can shut down this person and this person, they should be able to win. And then Michigan just came out and beat the brakes off of them. So I just feel like it's going to be an Indiana onslaught. And two, one thing we haven't talked a ton about specifically is in that national championship game, it was Blake Corum the entire season. We're like, what happened to Donovan Edwards? And then Donovan Edwards comes out and runs for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns in the national championship game. So that's where I think you can maybe get a little bit cute with your lineups and take a shot on some of these guys that maybe we haven't seen, like whether it's a Marty Brown or a JoJo Trader, who they've talked about all season. He just hasn't had the usage. I don't know that I'd go super heavy on anything like that, but that was a situation where it's like, oh, they opened up the playbook a little bit more and ran a couple of things that we haven't seen yet. And that's certainly viable in this game too, I think. All right, we do have a question. So thoughts on a 1-5 Miami receiver captain, assuming garbage time if IU goes up big. If I'm understanding correctly, is this like a Miami, like Malachi Toney captain and then 5 Indiana guys?
I think that's how I read it. And,
I guess don't hate it. I guess the only like receiver that I would do that with is Toney, just because he could throw a touchdown, run a touchdown. Like you don't have to have like a back to push Toney. Just from like my prediction of the game, I don't necessarily. I don't hate it in large field for sure. It's definitely tells a story.
Yeah, and I feel like in that scenario, you're looking at, Indiana scoring 6 touchdowns, but both running backs get a rushing touchdown, and then Mendoza spreads it out on short passes, or you get maybe like a tight end rushing touchdown or something weird like that, where you're getting production from the offense, but it's so spread out that, and obviously I think you're going to have Mendoza in the flex spot in that scenario too.
Yeah,
and like really the best
scenario.
Yeah, the best scenario for that lineup working out is like back pick sixes as well, to where the Indiana offense isn't like really having to, push it, I guess. So, Bill.
All right, are we back?
There he is.
We got you.
In terms of rules on Saber tonight, I don't like Saber sets it up so well already for each specific slate. I typically don't mess with it too much. Really, what it comes down to when I'm building my pools out, it's making sure that I have my exposures. Like I said earlier, like if I'm playing Surratt, I probably want to be double the field on him. And I am playing Surratt and probably will be double the field on him. But I tend more toward like making sure that my player exposures are right, especially in a single showdown game. And then making sure that, I think it's going to be an Indiana onslaught. So I'll be pushing that side a little bit heavier.
I think what just taking out a lot of stuff that Hamhock said about when you're building, thinking about building, if you're taking a shot on a cheap, Indiana option, it means it comes with Indiana onslaught. You can say the same thing with Miami. If you think Miami's going to win, maybe it's Marty Brown with a Miami onslaught type deal. If you're playing kickers, maybe think about if you're playing the quarterbacks with them. So in those specific scenarios, it's how you're building the narratives are important to think about when you're building out.
And then one final question before we get out of here. AFC Angelo, can you throw either or both Hemby and Black into the Mendoza pass catching group? I don't know that I'd necessarily consider them pass catchers, but I don't mind I don't mind playing both of them with Mendoza, especially if you're going to do a 5-1 stack and think it's an onslaught. If you get, if like I said, if they score 6 touchdowns and 2 or 3 of them go to the running backs, I think there's a very real scenario where both of them can be in the optimal with Mendoza.
Yeah, in the cash, I don't think I would do that in the cash signal entry, but playing my game, I just think they eat into each other too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I mean, I think that's like you're using Mendoza in the flex there. And I guess if I'm interpreting your question right, like the way I do it, like if I'm building Mendoza, like I'm not gonna have just Black or just Hemby. It'll be like Surratt and Hemby, Surratt and Black. Like they'll be the second pass catcher. I wouldn't play just them with Mendoza, as your only out per se. So
yeah, and I think if you're playing both, it's definitely more of a GPP play, and if it's an Indiana onslaught, it's at least a 4-2, if not a 5, probably more likely a 5-1 build in that scenario. All right, so before we get out of here, though, Hamhock, we just got a comment about it too. You want to tell us about your background?
So the last night of the event, they have like these posters for DraftKings set up, and my guest went up and asked one of the guys, like, "Hey, can I have one of those?" And they gave him one, and they had another one, so I took the other one, and then I had like some room in I shipped my golf clubs down there, and so I threw them back in with my golf clubs and shipped them back home. And I was like, what better way to display them? I don't know. Maybe I should put one in my room. Wouldn't that be cool?
You earned it, man. You earned it this year. Dominant college football season from our guy.
Yeah, heck of a season. 8th place finish at the College Football World Championship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like that, I mean, I'm not going to by any means say like go for live events, because they definitely take some bankroll, and you have to like get first to qualify, and then you have to play through a play down. But like that event was awesome. There's only 10 competitors, so it's a lot more intimate. Like I've been to other stuff, and it's like it's just me and my guests kind of hanging out. Well, this one, there was like a whole group of us like hanging out the whole time. It made the weekend really fun. Like it was definitely, I mean, the game was awesome. Just getting to hang out with everybody was just as fun. So, but yeah, it was a great live final. I definitely, if there's one that you're gonna pick in the sport, that's definitely a good one, I think.
Yeah, and you get to be at a semifinal game.
Right. That's what makes like the golf one and the college football one so much better, is because you actually get to go to the event.
Yeah, that's definitely sweetens the pot for those two sports, and it was just awesome to see your name up on the top of the charts and know that Shippin' Nation was part of the College Football World Championship. And then, like you said, you got the fun game of the semifinal game,
right?
The more entertaining one. So, I think that's gonna do it, guys. I appreciate you guys hopping on and joining me. It's not often we get to do a live show, and it's not often we get to have more than one talking head up here. So to have 3 breaking it down on a Monday morning is just awesome.
Yeah, good luck, everyone. Happy end and last day of college football season. It's been a great year. Look forward to it again next year. Good luck.
Hell yeah. Hoosiers. Ready for it, dude? You're going to be hearing a lot of that tonight.
Yeah, you're gonna hear. I've
no
seen
way
videos.
Anything about the U? No. I'll put my Gator helmet up first, but Hope everyone wins some money.
Yeah. That's the most important thing. Let's see those Shipping Nation flags flying up top. And if you're watching and you're not part of the nation, we have this banner here on the screen, 5 days for $19. If you want our college football content for tonight, it's less than $20 and you get 5 days. So you can get a peek into PGA season too, which just started up and just get the whole shebang. So definitely a great time to join as we end football season and get into PGA. But like I said, that's going to do it for this college football show. Let's go out there and ship one for the big guy tonight.